Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to welcome you to Moody Coliseum on the beautiful campus of SMU. My name is Brad Cheeves, and I have the privilege of serving as Vice President for Development and External Affairs here at SMU and work with a very capable team in the production of today's special moment. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon to hear from His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. And at this time, I'd ask that all of you, because I know all of you have a cell phone, please turn it off or move it to silence so that we can all have a wonderful focused moment today. If you would please, at this time, I'd ask that the audience hold your applause as we make some special introductions, but until we complete all the special introductions. But we have a very important one to make at this time, and I'd ask at this time that you greet the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush, and Mrs. Laura Bush. Would you please stand? Thank you. It is always a privilege to have President and Mrs. Bush in Moody Coliseum, and we always win. Just for At this time, it's also my privilege to introduce some special guests. SMU is governed by a board of trustees, and several members of our governing board are here this afternoon. And I'm going to introduce them, ask that they stand and remain standing, and then if you'll greet all of our special guests at one time when I've completed those introductions. Chair of the SMU Board of Trustees, Mike Boone. Brad Brookshire, if you'd stand and remain standing. Laura Bush, who you just met. Rafin Farouk, student trustee. Fred Hagee. Paul Lloyd. Bobby Lyle. Bishop Mike McKee. Connie O'Neill. Sharon Patterson. And Gene Phillips. And we're also joined this afternoon by SMU benefactor Nancy Dedman and SMU's First Lady, Gail Turner. Would you please welcome our special guests? One of the many benefits of SMU's partnership with the Bush Presidential Center is the opportunity to co-host events just like this one. We are pleased to have former United States Secretary of Education and current president of the Bush Center, Margaret Spellings, with us this afternoon, and we're honored to be in a partnership with her on a daily basis. Would you join me in thanking and welcoming Secretary Spellings? Thank you. SMU and the Bush Center are also pleased to have the support of the World Affairs Council of Dallas-Fort Worth, and on many occasions SMU has had the great fortune of partnering with the World Affairs Council, and then also today the Crow Collection of Asian Art and their organization have been supportive of today's event. And I'd like to ask at this time Jim Falk, President and CEO of the World Affairs Council of Dallas-Fort Worth, and Amy Hofflin, Executive Director of the Crow Collection, to please stand and receive your appreciation and our thanks. Right down here. This is a historic and wonderful day for this university community, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the 10th President of SMU, Dr. R. Gerald Turner.
Thank you. I join Brad in welcoming you to the campus this afternoon. SMU is grateful for the opportunity once again to host His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama to campus. For many of you, this is your second opportunity to see him on our campus. In May 2011, he received an honorary degree from the university, and then he gave the keynote address of the Heart Global Leaders Forum in McFarland Auditorium. We're also pleased to welcome Cokie Roberts back to campus. As many of you know, she's been on the Tate lecture 5 times, and most recently this past fall. SMU is honored to be the home of the George W. Bush Presidential Center that gives the community and guests from around the world the opportunity to walk through history. In this unique resource, they can examine issues related to the Bush Center's area of focus: education reform, global health, human freedom, and economic growth. And we also are glad that most of them visit the broader campus after going to the Bush Presidential Center. Our partnerships with the Bush Center are numerous. Members of the SMU faculty serve as teachers, mentors, and researchers for Bush Institute programs. And Bush Institute fellows and SMU faculty can become concurrent fellows. For example, there's currently an SMU faculty member serving as a Bush Institute fellow on energy issues. The Bush Center also partners on research and programs with SMU's John Godwin Tower Center for Political Studies, the Annette Caldwell Simmons School of Education and Human Development, and the Edwin L. Cox School of Business. And our faculty are not the only ones who benefit from these partnerships with the Bush Center. President Bush has been kind enough with his time to come to campus on several occasions to speak with students in political science, anthropology, journalism, and of course, presidential history classes. And on May the 16th of this year, he spoke to the centennial graduating class of SMU, at which time he gave great hope to his fellow C students for their future. Also, more than 100 SMU students have had the chance to serve as interns at the Bush Center. And of course, how many university students can tweet about the President and First Lady attending basketball games, football games, and various other activities that both of them or each one of them individually are able to attend? It's hard to believe that it's only been 2 years since the Bush Center opened in April of 2013. Since that period of time, over 800,000 visitors have come to campus, and we look forward to continuing this partnership for many years to come. At this time, I'd like to welcome to the podium the president of the George W. Bush Presidential Center and former U.S. Secretary of Education in President Bush's administration, Margaret Spellings. Secretary Spellings.
Thank you, President Turner. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. The George W. Bush Presidential Center and our Human Freedom Initiative are thrilled to welcome His Holiness to the United States on the occasion of his 80th birthday. We thank our friends and partners at the Office of Tibet, of course SMU, the World Affairs Council, and the Crow Collection of Asian Art for making this day such a community celebration. It's my distinct honor to introduce His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet. He was born, as you might know, on July 6, 1935, to a farming family in northeastern Tibet. At the age of 2, he was recognized as the reincarnation of the previous 13th Dalai Lama. He began a monastic education at the age of 6 and took his final exams at the age of 23. As a former Secretary of Education, I'm delighted to say that he passed those exams with honors. In 1959, when China suppressed the Tibetan national uprising, His Holiness escaped into exile. Since then, he's lived in Dharamsala in northern India. His Holiness has always demonstrated a commitment to democracy and to fundamental human freedoms. In 1963, he presented a draft democratic constitution for Tibet that enshrines freedoms of speech, belief, assembly, and movement. We are proud to have an early draft of what became that Constitution and His Holiness's handwritten notes in the Bush Center's Freedom Collection Archive, which is an online archive containing a curriculum for high school students and nearly 100 video interviews with men and women who have struggled for freedom around the world. His Holiness is a man of peace. In 1989, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for his nonviolent approach to the liberation of Tibet and his concern for the global environment. In 2012, he received the Templeton Prize for his life's work and his efforts to encourage scientific investigation of the power of compassion. His Holiness has traveled to more than 67 countries spanning 6 continents. He's a prolific author. He holds frequent dialogues with religious and political leaders. Among these is his dear friend, President George W. Bush. During President Bush's time in Washington, he and His Holiness met on 5 occasions, including one to present His Holiness with a Congressional Gold Medal. Today, they're both out of political office, but that hasn't seemed to slow down them at all. We're here today to celebrate the 80th birthday of a remarkable man and spiritual leader. Accompanied by his translator, Mr. Thutpen Jinpa. Please join me in welcoming His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet.
So, Michael.
All right. Your Holiness, you have many fans and admirers, as you can hear. This includes the students of Booker T. Washington High School for the Performing and Visual Arts in downtown Dallas. Booker T, as we call it, is one of the premier magnet high schools in the United States. Its academic standards are high, and its graduates attain remarkable success as award-winning musicians, dancers, and artists. Booker T. Washington High School also boasts an active Tibet Club, which was formed out of a collaboration with the Crow Collection of Asian Art and the monks of the Mystical Arts of Tibet tour. Students in the Tibet Club create original linoleum and woodblock prints combining traditional Buddhist symbols with the students' own images of hope. Prayer flags represent messages of hope to promote peace, compassion, strength, and wisdom. Tibetans believe the prayers and mantras will be blown by the wind to spread goodwill and compassion into all pervading space. The prayer flags are thought to benefit all of us here today, too. Madison Chu and Robin Vuich recently graduated from Booker T and served as co-presidents of the Tibet Club during their senior year. Please welcome them as they present His Holiness with original prayer flags that club members created in honor of his visit. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
I now have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for today's conversation. Cokie Roberts is a political commentator for ABC News and National Public Radio. From 1996 to 2002, she co-anchored the weekly ABC interview program This Week. During her career in broadcasting, she's won countless awards, including 3 Emmys. If broadcasting weren't enough, she's also a prolific and best-selling writer. Her best-selling books include From This Day Forward and We Are Our Mother's Daughters. President Bush appointed Ms. Roberts to his commission on service and civic participation. In the post-White House years, she's participated in Bush Center summits in Washington, D.C. and Tanzania on investing in women and girls in Africa. Please give a warm SMU welcome to Cokie Roberts.
Sir.
나가죠.
So, Your Holiness, you are here in this beautiful place which has been built for basketball. They're hoping to win.
그래서
랍라디 바스켓볼 초대 토베
And you are on quite a birthday tour. You have already been, this is the 80th birthday tour. You've already had an extensive trip to Australia, then back to India, where many celebrations, then on to England, where you were on stage with Patti Smith at the Glastonbury Music Festival. This isn't quite the same. I can't burst into song. So now you're here, on to California. Are you going to do what some people we know do on their 80th birthdays and jump out of an airplane?
그래서 넘는
야 메가식 로제지 담을 레벨 가려야 내만 맞춰야 되는지 남들 기분을 맞춰야 되는데 지금 그래서
it's quite silly.
Well, we're going to have a nice conversation, and we have also asked through the internet and social media for questions from the audience, and we have some questions that have been written in because there's so many wonderful people here that we couldn't do it from the audience directly. But first, I know you wanted to say a few words, and you can either do it sitting right here or whichever.
I'll go there.
Or whichever you prefer.
대단하셔.
Right here is fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Person whose age now 80 years. So sometimes I little printed like that. So then I have more reason because I need more rest. If I say like that. Then some people say, no need rest. If I say, I go like that, then people automatically feel necessary of more rest. Okay, thank you. Actually, quite too busy day in England, then long flight. I think nearly 9 hours flight. Then last night, 10 hours sleep. Too much? What do you think? Okay. Usually, you see, I sleep. It's because of no matter what the time differences. Fix my watch, local time, then local time about 6 or 6:30. My sort of because of the eyelids become heavy. Then sleep, usually about 9 hours, always. Then morning, 3 o'clock, sometimes 2:30, wake up. Then some meditation. So if I'm not so sufficient sleep, then during meditation, some sleep comes. Last night, it was a 10-hour sleep, so sufficient. This morning, very fresh. So in any way, indeed, I'm very, very happy having this opportunity, sharing my own little experience. So naturally, older people, and also you see people who passing through difficult life, is a more experience. So some of my experience is may find some of you some sort of some benefit. I hope so. So, firstly, I want to thank organizer and particularly my longtime friend, President Bush. Since our first meeting in the White House, immediately we develop very close feeling, heart to heart. So since then, I always remember him like that. So I'm extremely happy. Once more, some kind of reunion. I really very much appreciate. Thank you. Thank you. And both, of course, Mr. and Mrs. Bush. Wonderful. Thank you. So now, whenever I talk, firstly, I'm talking on the level I'm just one human being. One out of 7 billion human beings. No differences. I'm 7 billion human beings. Emotionally, mentally, physically, we are same. We all have the same right to achieve happy life. That's everybody, even insects, animals also want happy life, do not want disturbances. So we all, 7 billion human beings, have equal right. Now the problem, we human beings, because of our brain, especially unique brain, that brain, source of many good things, such as infinite love, compassion, forgiveness, tolerance. Our brain have the capacity to develop these things. Other animals, they say love towards their own youngsters like that. No sort of the infinite love. At the same time, our brain also sometimes causing more destructive things, destructive emotion, such as anger, hatred, fear. Animals also have some extent, but we, because of this special brain, is a more sophisticated, more complicated feeling. So therefore, now experiences, particularly dealing with people. Now I learned a lot of problems which we are facing, essentially our own creation. Animal, sometimes they create some problem, including little violence, but very limited. Our intelligence sometimes create the much serious sort of violence like that. So therefore, now we have to, so all these I usually call man-made problem. That does not mean every female, among the female, no troublemaker, does not mean that. Some females also is quite because of troublesome. So, but generally speaking, is all these problems, measure of these problems which we are facing today, even this very day here, we are enjoying here peaceful, equal, using individual freedom, liberty, but this very moment, different part of the world, suffering, killing, human being killing human being. And then worst thing, religions, various different religious traditions, all religions, major religions, you see, carrying the message of love. And with that, message of tolerance, message of forgiveness, message of self-discipline. Same, all major religious traditions. So, religious faith is really a source of love, forgiveness. That very factor causing more division, hatred, anger, unthinkable, or killing, unthinkable. So these are man-made problems. Then also, let's say among the sort of materially affluent society, all the material facility, excellent. But individual, you see, as a human being, not necessarily a happy person. Too much stress, worry, deep inside fear, distrust. So material value, material facility cannot provide our inner peace. So some of my friends, I think a billionaire, very rich, but as a person, very unhappy person. And then a lot of sort of troublemaker, not only in the past, but even today. These, I think many of them quite well educated. But their education, unfortunately, you see, used for further trouble. So then, you see, it becomes quite clear we are lacking the deeper understanding about value of compassion, love. Sometimes you see people who have no sort of interest about religion. Now out of 10 billion, out of 7 billion, now end of this century, human population will reach 10 billion. So in any way, today, 7 billion. So out of 7 billion, over 1 billion are non-believer. These also human beings, they also have the right to achieve happy life. So irrespective whether believer or non-believer, we all need pay more attention about our inner value. So therefore, you see, it seems to me, existing education system, sometimes we call modern education, it seems lacking about education of warm-heartedness. These inner value, actually the basis of moral principle. You see, these, sometimes you see people feel these are religious sort of kind of matter. Of course, all religion, as I mentioned earlier, carry these sort of practice or these message there. So you see people consider practice of compassion, love, forgiveness is part of religious practice. So then those people who have not much interest about religion, then they also completely neglect this inner value. Whether a person believes in religion or not, it's up to the individual. But so long they are part of humanity, human being, they also have a right to achieve a happy life. Then also we, human being, social animal, no matter how powerful one individual, without rest of the community, one individual cannot survive. No question, happy life. But even to the survival, very much depend on the rest of the community. That's the fact. Then, as a social animal, we emotionally, we need certain sort of emotion which bring together. That is love, affection, sense of community. So we are social animal, but deep inside, just only self-centered attitude. Just a me, 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 me. That's actually against basic nature of social animal. Even animal, no education, no sophisticated brain, but emotionally, biologically, they have some sense of community. So we now can teach people. We need a sense of concern of others' well-being, because others is basis of your future. So take care more seriously about well-being of others. Then you got more friends. You get more friends. Social animal, we need friendship, friends. Friendship entirely based on trust. Trust based on taking care of others' well-being. Then trust comes. Then your life can lead transparently. That is basis of friendship. Too much self-centered attitude will not bring friendship. So, whether believer or non-believer, doesn't matter. Since we are part of social animal, we are the part of the humanity and the social animal. We have to pay more attention about these inner values. So, the education field, we should include some education about these values based on scientific finding. I have over 30 years serious discussion with scientists, mainly 4 fields: cosmology, neurobiology, physics, particularly quantum physics, then psychology. So these medical scientists, some medical scientists say, constant fear, constant anger develop, actually eating our immune system. So more sense of concern of others' well-being, that automatically bring inner strength. Inner strength brings calm mind. Calm mind is the very important factor for healthy body. Recently, I was in Australia, in Sydney, some sort of discussion in the public. One lady, she told at that meeting, for physical sort of well-being, the thinking about love, certainly useful, but even more useful, not only thinking love, but actually implement love, serving other people, helping other people, sort of love translate into action. That is more effect for health. That I first learned. So in any way, these are not come from religious teaching, but scientific finding like that. So therefore, you see, we really need, I think, some sort of lesson about warm-heartedness as a human value in education field. Then, I think today's world, because our education just oriented about material value, so whole generation come through that kind of education, except you see those people who seriously follow religious sort of practice. Otherwise, you see people generally not much sort of pay attention about this inner value. So the whole society like that, then some mischievous people, even including young people, killing, I said, indiscriminately. And also now, you see, not only in the past, but even today, some cases, little sort of racial problem. Because all this, we too much sort of emphasis in the level of secondary level of differences, color, religious faith, and different nationality, and even same religion, same sort of also people, but then still say rich, poor, and this gap, rich and poor. All these, we too much emphasis, secondary level of differences. We neglect completely about oneness of human level. So we have to make every effort to promote sense of oneness of humanity. The secondary level of differences then will not affect on the basic level. We are same. Different faith, different color, different nation, different belief, but still we are same human being. So that now I learned we really need constant effort from various ways, through various sort of professions, media people, education, and leaders or religious leaders. I think different sort of profession aim global level, happier world, peaceful world, compassionate world. I think we all have, I think here, a few thousand people here. Each of you, part of humanity. Each of you keep certain sort of, certain sort of, knowledge. We are same. We are part of humanity. So then we develop sense of responsibility because we are part of humanity. Humanity happy, I will happy. Humanity, lot of problem. Then our life, individual life, remain with fear, some kind of anxiety. So we have to think humanity. So each of you, individual, think more, not just rely on what I said. You yourself analyze. Then you get more sort of conviction. Then implement that. Share with your friend. For one person, at least you have some, at least 10 people you have known. Share with 10 people. Then each of them share, so their own sort of friend, 10. That means from 1 to 10, from 10, 100, 1,000, like that. So when we talk about humanity or global sort of issue, sometimes we feel, oh, I'm individual, I cannot do much. So should not think that way. These change global level or improve happier world. Initiative must come from individual, not government level or United Nations. These, we individual, from grassroots, we have to work with certain vision. Okay. What do you think? Is there some sense? Thank you. If you feel some sense, then think more seriously. If you feel that not much sense, then just leave it here in the hall, and you go, you see, your own way, and you get more and more trouble. That's all. Thank you. Although I have my own hat here, when I give some talk with a strong light, yes. This hat I always carry, but this is more comfortable, so I
Covers
use
more
this.
of your head, right. So, Your Holiness, there's a little news to talk about, which is that yesterday in Brussels, the President of the European Union was meeting with the Chinese Premier, Li Keqiang, and he said afterwards that he, and I'm quoting him, he said, "I have urged China to restart a meaningful dialogue with the Dalai Lama's representatives." So do you think there's any hope there for something to come of that?
I didn't heard that. But in any way, some Chinese leaders, since some time back, you see, they realize the present existing policy is actually counterproductive. So these people usually have some sort of, thinking seriously how to solve this problem. And then still hardliners also you see there. They feel the present suppressive policy can win. These are short-sighted, too much emotion. And these people, I think, out of their weakness, they shy to admit their failure. It's silly. So they are acting for most populated nation. It's mistake always happen. Admit mistake, then change.
Not easy for humans to do. Not easy for humans to do.
Right. So now, for example, I think recently, one deputy party secretary of Autonomous Region of Tibet, when he met some Indian correspondent, Indian media people, few of them, he mentioned there is sort of talk going very smoothly about the Dalai Lama's sort of pilgrimage, some of the Buddhist sort of holy places in China. The deputy party secretary. Then I think within after 2-3 months, the party secretary, sort of reiterated their hardliner attitude. So it is clearly shows there are some different opinions among their organization like that. So we'll see. But one sort of hopeful sign now among the Chinese. Of course, historically, China is a Buddhist country. So no matter how hard work, immense destruction during Cultural Revolution, but the revival of spirituality, a lot of Christians and a lot of Buddhists. So traditionally, China is a Buddhist country. So now today, Buddhist population in China, over 400 millions. I think bigger than American population, like that.
And
so many of them really showing genuine interest about Tibetan Buddhism. Many of them follow Tibetan Buddhism. And in India also, they annually, or these days, every week, some Chinese from mainland China come to India seeing me. And
Right.
most of them, when we met, tear comes, like that. So these are, I think the sign of maturity. And then also the Xi Jinping, president, he publicly stated in Paris as well as in Delhi, the Buddhism, a very important part of Chinese culture. He publicly mentioned like that. So this is some positive sign. But we'll see, difficult to predict. A
But-
communist, authoritarian, closed society, difficult to predict.
But Your Holiness, at the same time that you see those positive signs and you talk about the increase of Buddhism in China, one of the issues you've been very concerned about and President Bush has been so concerned about and that his institute focuses on is religious freedom around the world. And we're seeing terrible instances of religious freedom being suppressed, whether it's the Yazidis or Christians in Syria and Iraq, or whether it's Muslims in Nigeria and Christians in Burma. I mean, there are awful examples around the world. Is there something we can be doing about that?
그래서 주로 Now, one of my commitment is promotion of religious harmony. With belief or understanding the various different religious tradition, I usually should look three aspects. One aspect is religion. At that aspect, whether theistic religion or non-theistic religion, all religion, you see, carry, as I mentioned earlier, same message of love, same practice, you see, these things. Then, another aspect is philosophy. There are differences. Even within theistic religion, there are some differences. And between theistic and non-theistic, major differences. But these different philosophical views are same goal. You see, use different views, different philosophical views in order to strengthen, in order to promote these religious sort of message of love. For example, according to theistic religion, we all created by one God. That God, infinite love. So since that kind of creator, infinite love, looks like our Father. This very life created by God. So that means we have direct link with God. That is infinite love. So that brings, you see, enthusiasm. We created by such sort of wonderful, infinite loving sort of God. So that automatically gives us courage to practice love. Then also you see, everyone have some kind of spark of God. Wonderful. Then non-theistic religion also uses a certain way to sort of emphasize importance of practice of love. So different method, different philosophy is like different method, same goal. Then that different method is necessary among the humanity, different location, India, Europe, at different part of the world, you see different location, different cultural heritage, different way of life, therefore automatically different mental disposition there, so different way of approach is necessary. So long, all aiming same goal, promotion of love, compassion, forgiveness. Then third part is cultural heritage. That's when these founders come, the actual sort of circumstances, environment, accordingly, certain aspect of culture happen. So I notice many of my friends, Christians, wonderful, really dedicated, serving people. Then some Muslims also, wonderful. I want to share with you here the meaning of jihad. Nowadays, jihad means something, harming other people. Real meaning of jihad is not that way. Jihad means combat within yourself destructive emotion. Combat with destructive emotion. That's the meaning of jihad. So all practitioners of love always carry jihad. Anger, hatred, and compassion. Or say combat. So like that. So genuine Islam practitioner should not create any bloodshed of human being. So they say the Islam practitioner must extend love towards entire creature of Allah. What a wonderful. So you see, every religion, that sort of city, if you sincerely follow, if you sort of seriously follow, then all major religious tradition, I think really worthwhile to respect. So like that. So we have to accept there is differences, but all differences, same goal, same aim. Then no problem.
Right, no problem, there you are. Good.
So these things,
So,
you see, due to lack of contact, remain isolated. Then here, I think historically, you see, the concept of one truth, one religions. So every religion, you see, talking that is according to individual believer. That's good, that's relevant. Believe one truth, so one religion. But in the terms of community, in the terms of humanity, several truths, several religions there. Last over 3,000 years, you see different religions there. Whether we like it or not, it is a real reality. We have to live together. So that's much better, live harmoniously rather than killing.
right. When-
Silly.
Let me ask
These
you,
are sort of narrow-minded, short-sighted.
let me ask you about another aspect of living together. You talked about moral education, and you have become very interested in another cause that Mrs. Bush is very interested in, which is the education of women and girls. And her friend Mrs. Obama has taken the cue from Mrs. Bush, and they work on it together. Do you see ways that, tell us why you think that's so important?
Because of me.
Female room is the chair, catch me, but
Here, you see, since many years, I am sort of telling, I emphasize, in human history, I think several 100,000 years ago, then human population very small, and the lifestyle very, very simple. At that time, no concept of leadership. So all live together equally, and whatever they get, share together. Then gradually population increased. Then also farming system developed. Then some mischievous people, some crimes, they happen. Then the concept of leadership comes. So at that time, no rule of education. So in order to become a leader, the physical strength, like other animals, social animal, they're more stronger sort of physically, that usually is the lead. So like that. So then male dominance is the start. Then gradually education develop. So education brings more equal, male and female. Now today, education alone not sufficient, not adequate to bring happy person or happy community, as I mentioned earlier. So now time comes, we have to pay more attention about value of love. In that respect, in such time, female should take more active role regarding promoting of compassionate society, compassionate humanity. Again, it is according to scientists, female biologically more sensitive about others' pain. I think human history, we can see most of sort of past hero. Those hero means great murderer. Most of these heroes are male, isn't it?
It's a shame.
I think some female hero may be there, but most of them are male. So therefore, now today, I think the nurses and in aeroplane kasa hostess kasa
hospices now. Kind of hostesses now.
Oh, in aeroplane. Oh,
Hostesses, yeah.
hostesses and nurses, mostly is a female. You see, they really take care like that. So therefore, as scientists it is mentioned, you see, female biologically more sensitive of others' sort of pain. So female should take more active role for promotion of human, of the compassionate humanity. Firstly, I think the female, all mother, female, no matter how kind of father, you see, it cannot bring sort of just milk. So me also, you see, as a male, always talk compassion, nurturing people, but I cannot also provide milk like that. So therefore, biologically, female, you see, biologically, you see, equipped, you see, caring, child, like that. So again, you see, scientists say that after birth, mother's physical touch, the child, is very important factor for proper development of their brain. Then it's those people who received maximum affection in the early part of life, their whole life remain more compassionate person. In deep inside, some kind of happy, less sense of insecurity. That those people who outwardly very smart, but you see, who lacking affection at the time of very young age, then in deep inside, some sense of insecurity. With that, difficult to trust other people. So that person remain a deep inside unhappy person. So therefore, the mother, very, very important, female, very, very important. Sometimes I jokingly telling the world leader or president or prime minister, if female take more responsibility in leadership, perhaps I think the world become more peaceful.
Right.
I really feel that. So that really, you see, really, I really feel you see, seriously, in any way, we need making constant effort, tirelessly, to promote these deeper human value, which we acquit by biologically. Now, some scientists experimented, and on some occasion I also used to participate. You see, very young infant, few months, not yet developed language, show cartoon, one cartoon, same sort of young age sort of, because of the children, play together, showing affection. The very young infant person, even a child, is showing smile, happy. Then cartoon show, another cartoon show, you see, one child creates some obstacle to other, more negative way. Then the infant child, you see, express unhappy sorrow, response. So that shows basic human nature is more compassionate. And biologically, you see, as I mentioned earlier, you see, constant anger, hatred, very bad for our health. Compassionate mind really release our inner fear. You know, when you have more compassionate sort of feeling, look, this person looks friend, human brother, sister. Look here, human brother, sisters. If you keep here too much self-centered attitude and fear, distrust, look here also is a distance. Then I always say, telling people, when I give talk, when I meet people, I always consider myself as just another human being. If I too much emphasis, I'm Dalai Lama, or then actually I myself distance from the audience, then more anxiety, like that, more fear. So I myself make prisoner of Dalai Lama-ship, right? Like that. So therefore, you see the compassion. So female, I think biologically more potential to provide love, not to the love or the physical sort of beauty, not mad love, not that, genuine love.
Genuine love.
No, that is, I think, very, very important, like that. Okay.
Okay.
I think I want to add something. Loving kindness. Now here, you see two levels. One level, biological factor. That even common with animal. That biological factor, compassion, love, is very much based on others' attitude. So that kind of affection, love, cannot extend towards your enemy. Now we human beings, with help of this marvelous intelligence, and with help of intelligence, our common sense, thinking humanity, you see, nobody wants enemy. The ultimate source of enemy is your own destructive emotion. That brings enemy. If you keep loving kindness towards anybody, including your enemy, then today's enemy eventually, you see, will change. So therefore, you see, use common sense, then extend our loving kindness towards entire humanity. Not oriented their attitude, but oriented as a human brothers, sisters. Your enemy, also human brothers, sisters. So then, at that time, we have to make distinction. Enemy is action and enemy as an actor. Make distinction. Action is concerned, sometimes we need appropriate countermeasure to stop their wrongdoing. But actor, enemy, as a human being, they also reserved our loving kindness.
So I want to get in one question from the audience.
That's unbiased loving kindness. Previous one, biased loving kindness.
This is a question that came from Ted Dodson, who says, you stated that the incarnation of the Dalai Lama might end upon your death. Is this correct? And if so, can you please explain why? I would like to add that I also read that you might come back, you said, as a mischievous blonde woman.
Because of mischievous teenager. Actually, you see, why I used to state that. Firstly, you see, some people, mainly I think outside world or West, you see, Dalai Lama Institute is so important for Buddhism, for, Tibetan, because of the
Survival of Tibetan Buddhism.
survival for Tibetan Buddhism. This is not the case. Now, for example, Buddha himself, after his teaching, you see, he passed away. No reincarnation of, well-known reincarnation of Buddha. No Buddha's institution there. No. His teaching is still alive. So, like Dalai Lama institution, about, I think, 14th, 15th century, Dalai Lama institution started. That also, first Dalai Lama, not with institution, good scholar, good practitioner, then his sort of rebirth clearly demonstrated by that child himself. So very convincing his previous life, first Dalai Lama. So then eventually that institution started. So in certain period this institution started. Now there must be end. So therefore, you see, as early as 69, I think after 10 years we become refugee. I publicly stated, formally, officially, I stated, this very institution of Dalai Lama should continue or not up to Tibetan people. I clearly mentioned that. So I have not much concern about this institution. So now today, Chinese communists more concerned about Dalai Lama's institution than me. So I think because of political reasons, so like that. One way, this living Dalai Lama, they consider demon. But they, at the same time, showing very much concern about the 15th Dalai Lama. So they are quite expert to create a lot of contradictions. Right? So that's my reason. So you see, I think now many of you already know, 2011, I totally retired from political responsibility. Over the last 4 centuries, you see, this sort of practice started, this tradition started. Now, you see, time of democracy, rule of people, rule by people, it's the real future of the world. You see, kings and queens. Recently, I was in London. You see, one interview I mentioned. Firstly, the world belongs to 7 billion human beings. Then America belongs to 300 millions of American people, not Democratic Party or Republican Party, like that. So in England, I also mentioned, England belongs to English people, not Queen. And Japan also, I express that way. Japan's royal family, of course, good, symbol of that nation. But actually, Japan belongs to Japanese people. So therefore, Tibet also belongs to Tibetan people, not to Dalai Lama. So Dalai Lama come and should go. So then I jokingly telling or expressing the end of Dalai Lama institution with quite popular Dalai Lama is much better. Then 15 Dalai Lama come, become disgrace, and that institution and is really disgrace.
Embarrassing.
So much better. After me, many people say, "Oh, nice Dalai Lama, nice Dalai Lama." That's much better. So at lunchtime, I expressed, my dear friend is Bush, is younger than me, so I may go first. So he should carry some of my responsibility continuously. And then meantime, you see, meantime, I'm quite sure he reminds the people who never saw me, he reminds them, "Oh, Fortune Dalai Lama, very nice person," he will say that.
Well, speaking of your shared birthday, we have a little surprise for you after this wonderful conversation, which I greatly thank you for. And would like to ask the crowd, President Mrs. Bush, maybe you can lead us on to all stand and sing Happy Birthday.
깨세 그다음에 통과하기 시작하는
Oh,
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Your Holiness. Happy birthday to you.
thank you. Oh. Thank you, thank you. So, now, last few days, you see many people, many occasions, happy birthday, happy birthday. Then I sort of was telling them, actually, new century, new decade, new year, new month, new day. So each day is new day, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So now, you see, each day should use happy day. In order to use happy day, inner value is key factor, not the cake. A lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of stress. Then big birthday cake will not bring inner peace. So real inner peace, all have the potential, whether educated or uneducated, rich or poor, or this color or that color, believer or non-believer, no differences. We all have same potential. Please realize that. Keep self-confidence, more enthusiasm, optimistic is very, very important sort of factor for happy life. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that is the program. Thank you all so very much for coming. Thank you to President and Mrs. Bush and to the Bush Center and to SMU. Aren't we lucky to have had this day?